I'm 20, and in just 2 weeks, I'll be graduating from a pretty well-known college, at least well-known around here. The school gives each student 4 tickets for the ceremony. It's not that they're being cheap, the event takes place in the university's main auditorium, which isn't huge, and the graduating class this year is massive. I only needed 3 tickets. I sent them to my Aunt Donna, Uncle Kevin, and my cousin Jeremy. I didn't include my parents, Esther, and Frank. And yeah, that's where things get messy. This really goes back to my junior year of high school. One evening, my parents called me into the living room for what they called a family meeting. I remember feeling nervous, thinking maybe I was in trouble, but it wasn't about that. It was about money. They had me sit down on the couch, and my dad, Frank, cleared his throat like he was about to deliver a big announcement. He launched into this whole speech about how they were getting older and needed to focus on planning for their retirement. They told me they had their own future to think about, and that future didn't involve paying for my college. My mom, Esther, chimed in, saying that I was about to turn 18, I'd be a legal adult, and it was time I learned to support myself. I just sat there, nodding slowly, not because I agreed, but because I wasn't surprised. Honestly, some part of me had always sensed this was coming. My parents weren't broke by any means. They lived a very comfortable life. But when it came to me, they acted like every penny counted. Asking for basic stuff always felt like I was entering a negotiation. New clothes? Only if my old ones were falling apart, and even then, I get a speech about how expensive everything was and how I should appreciate what I had. Wanting to go on a school trip meant pleading with them. It was never that they didn't have the money, it was that they didn't want to spend it on me. So when they officially said they wouldn't help with college, it didn't shock me. It just confirmed what I already knew. Thankfully, I'd thought ahead. A few months earlier, I'd spoken to Uncle Kevin, my dad's older brother. I'd always felt way closer to him and his family than to my own parents. When I was younger, my parents were constantly busy with their social life, so they dropped me off at Uncle Kevin and Aunt Donna's house for weekends at a time. I practically grew up there. Aunt Donna never once made me feel like I was intruding. She and Uncle Kevin always treated me like I was one of their own. Their son Jeremy is 4 years older than me, and he's always been like the big brother I never had. I went to Uncle Kevin not expecting a handout, I just wanted to ask if he could co-sign a student loan. But before I could even finish, he looked at me and said, "Don't worry about college. Donna and I will handle it. You just focus on your education." Aunt Donna didn't hesitate either. She immediately backed him up, saying I was family and they were more than happy to help. I told them more than once that I wanted to repay them after I graduated and got on my feet, but they both insisted I didn't owe them anything. They're both doctors, he's a surgeon, she's a pediatrician, so they were financially stable, and with Jeremy already out of school, they didn't have any other tuition costs hanging over them. Now here we are, and graduation is right around the corner. I got the tickets, sent them to my aunt and uncle, and honestly, I didn't even think about my parents. I figured they wouldn't care. Since I started college, the distance between us only grew. I'd go home for Thanksgiving or Christmas, but even then, we barely talked. They'd be busy with their parties or out with friends, and I'd usually end up driving over to my uncle's house, which was about an hour away. Jeremy and I would try to sync up our visits so we could all spend time together. It felt right. It felt like home. Then last week, everything blew up. One afternoon, my mom called. At first, it was just small talk asking how classes were going, if I was excited about graduation. It felt fake, like she was just going through the motions. Then she handed the phone to my dad. And just like back in high school, he cleared his throat and asked, "So who did you decide to invite to the graduation ceremony?" Immediately, I felt my stomach tighten. I just said it flat out, I already invited Uncle Kevin, Aunt Donna, and Jeremy. Silence. Then my mom's voice came through, sharp and irritated, "You didn't invite your own parents?" I tried explaining about the ticket limit, how the venue was small, but my dad cut me off. His voice kept getting louder, more agitated. He started going on about how he'd been bragging to all his friends about my graduation, telling everyone how proud he was. Now, he said, he'd look like a complete idiot if he wasn't even there. He said they'd be humiliated. That's when I lost it. All the years of feeling like I didn't matter, like I was always second to their dinner parties or vacations, boiled to the surface. I shouted, "You haven't even asked me about college in 4 years. You're always too busy showing off and spending money on yourselves. You told me I was on my own." My mom yelled back, throwing out all the classic lines, "We raised you. We gave you a home, clothes, food. And this is how you repay us? With ingratitude?" I snapped, "You did the bare minimum and you're the ones who said you wouldn't pay for college. I was just a kid, and you made me fend for myself." Then I reminded them, word for word, of that conversation in the living room. I told them that Uncle Kevin and Aunt Donna were the ones who had my back, that they were my real family. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I blocked both their numbers right after that. I needed to talk to someone who actually cared. So I called Uncle Kevin and unloaded everything. He listened patiently. When I finally stopped talking, he just said in his usual calm way, "You did the right thing. Don't second guess yourself. You're our family, and we're proud of you." 2 days later, I got an email from my dad. It was long, full of excuses and these half-hearted apologies. He claimed they didn't spend much on me growing up because they wanted me to be humble and grateful. He insisted they thought we'd had a loving, close relationship and that all they ever wanted was for me to be independent. He said he was heartbroken that I'd misunderstood their intentions, and that I'd chosen Uncle Kevin's family over them. Then came the begging. He asked me to unblock them and send over graduation tickets. He promised they wouldn't post anything on social media. He said they just wanted a chance to make things right. And then, he even had the nerve to complain that I invited Jeremy but not them. Deep down, I knew it was all about saving face. It wasn't real. Still, it hurt. I don't know. Am I really the bad guy for not inviting my parents to my own graduation? Edit, a couple of people asked why my parents care so much now when they've been distant for years. Here's the thing, my college has a reputation. It's one of the top business schools in the state, and it's known for having a strong alumni network. Graduating from there is kind of a bragging point in their social circle. That's why they're suddenly trying to act proud. And for those wondering why I kept in touch with them for so long despite everything, it's complicated. They're my parents. I think I just kept hoping they'd eventually show up for me. Turns out, the only people who really did weren't them. It's hard to explain, but keeping in touch with my parents wasn't just one thing. During the school year, I didn't have any other place to stay. I know my uncle would have taken me in without hesitation, but I just couldn't bring myself to ask. I didn't want to feel like I was intruding or putting extra pressure on him and Aunt Donna. As for the occasional phone calls and visits, I think I kept them going partly out of habit, and partly because I still carried some sense of duty. Being on the sidelines of their lives had become so normal that I didn't even question it anymore. And if I'm being honest, there was a small, stubborn part of me that kept hoping they'd change, that one day, they'd finally act like the kind of parents I'd always wished I had. Update 1. I've made up my mind. I'm not replying to their email, and I'm definitely keeping them blocked. I read through it several times, trying to be fair, trying to look at it from every angle. But no matter how many times I went over it, the truth stayed the same, there was no real apology in there. Just a string of excuses, weak justifications, and guilt-tripping language meant to make me question myself. It was all about how I misunderstood them. About how hurt they were. Not once did they take true responsibility. Then something unexpected happened. Uncle Kevin and Aunt Donna had originally planned to fly in on the morning of my graduation, but they called me the other day with a change of plans. They were coming in 2 days early. They said they wanted to spend some extra time with me before everything got hectic. I was so happy I nearly cried. Having them here in person changed everything. We went out to dinner that night, just the three of us, and I finally felt ready to talk about everything face to face. I told Uncle Kevin the full story about the email, about how my parents claimed they only wanted to be there to impress their friends. He sighed and gave me that knowing look. "That sounds exactly like your father," he said. "He's always been like that." Then he told me stories I'd never heard before about when he and my dad were teenagers. Apparently, my dad was obsessed with popularity even back then. He always tried to hang out with the richest, most popular kids at school, even though, as Uncle Kevin put it, their family was solidly middle class. Nothing fancy. No luxury. Just regular folks. He went on to say that their parents, my grandparents, had met at a fraternity party in college and bonded over one thing: climbing the social ladder. That ambition had trickled down hard to my dad. Uncle Kevin got a little more serious then. He told me that many of my dad's current friends, the ones he's always trying to impress, aren't exactly stand-up people. He'd heard whispers about cheating, shady business dealings, all kinds of morally gray behavior. But outwardly, they all keep up this polished image of having perfect marriages and successful lives. He said it was genuinely pathetic that my dad, at his age, was still so obsessed with how those people saw him, so much so that he was willing to risk his relationship with me just to maintain that illusion. Hearing all that from Uncle Kevin, someone I trust with my whole heart, made me feel seen, validated. It confirmed what I'd always sensed deep down: my parents cared more about appearances than about real, emotional connection. Any guilt I'd still been carrying around just vanished after that. Graduation was now only 3 days away. I kept telling myself not to overthink it, not to let anxiety ruin the moment. But in the back of my mind, I was bracing for something, some public scene, some last-ditch attempt to make everything about them. Update 2. Graduation day came and it was everything I dreamed of. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Walking across that stage, shaking the dean's hand, accepting my diploma, it hit me like a wave. I'd done it. I felt proud in a way I hadn't in a long time. My aunt, uncle, and Jeremy were there in the audience, cheering louder than anyone. Jeremy had driven in that morning, straight from pulling an all-nighter at work, just to be there. When I spotted their faces, full of pride and joy, I nearly cried again. After the ceremony, we did the classic photos, me in my cap and gown, posing with Donna and Kevin, with Jeremy, with some of my classmates. Everyone was laughing, buzzing with relief and excitement. It felt like one of those rare perfect days. Then we left the auditorium and started walking to a nearby Italian restaurant that Uncle Kevin had booked weeks in advance for a celebratory lunch. That's when the chaos started. My phone began lighting up, notifications from Facebook, Instagram, even texts from distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Then Uncle Kevin's phone buzzed. Then Aunt Donna's. Then Jeremy's. My parents had gone on a full-blown social media tirade. They posted a long, bitter, unhinged rant across multiple platforms. I couldn't see it directly because I had them blocked, but my relatives were forwarding us screenshots left and right. The post accused me of being a spoiled, ungrateful brat. It said that my aunt and uncle had brainwashed me and stolen me away. They claimed I had demanded that they pay for my college out of jealousy over them helping Jeremy. They recycled their old excuse about raising me to be independent and humble. They claimed Uncle Kevin had turned me against them. But the worst part, the part that genuinely made me sick, was what they said about the miscarriage. They brought up something private. Something sacred. They said my aunt and uncle had lost a baby after Jeremy was born, and that ever since, they'd been bitter and resentful. They claimed Donna and Kevin were trying to replace the child they'd lost by clinging to me. Then they crossed a line I never thought anyone would. They implied that the miscarriage had been divine punishment. That Donna and Kevin weren't worthy of a second child. I was shaking. Rage, shock, nausea, it all hit me at once. Yes, it's true, Aunt Donna had a miscarriage. It happened a few months before I was born. They didn't know the gender, but she always said she had this strong feeling it would have been a girl. When I came along, they were so full of love, so ready to embrace me. They never treated me like a replacement. They treated me like family, because I am. For my parents to twist that loss, to weaponize it just to hurt people who stepped up when they wouldn't, it was monstrous. I stood there, frozen on the sidewalk outside the restaurant, gripping my phone like I wanted to throw it into traffic. My first instinct was to unblock them and go scorched earth, expose everything. But Uncle Kevin gently put his hand on my arm and said, calmly but firmly, "Don't." He said that's exactly what they wanted. They were trying to provoke me, to drag me down to their level. They wanted me to react. He told me to hold my head high and let them spiral. He said he'd contact a lawyer, just in case. He also reassured me that everyone in the family knew what my dad was really like. The people forwarding the screenshots weren't supporting my parents, they were disgusted. So we walked inside the restaurant, and I tried to push it all out of my head. It wasn't easy. But Aunt Donna, Uncle Kevin, and Jeremy did their best to keep things light. They cracked jokes, made heartfelt toasts, told funny stories from when I was little. Their warmth grounded me. Their love reminded me of what mattered. I don't know if my parents ever deleted the posts. I haven't looked. I don't plan to. Update 3. It's been a little over 2 weeks since graduation and the online circus that followed. Life is slowly returning to normal. I've thrown myself into job hunting and adjusting to the next chapter. Job hunting became my full-time routine, polishing my resume, writing endless cover letters, sitting through interview after interview. It's been draining, sure, but honestly, I welcomed the distraction. Anything to keep my mind off the mess with my parents. I'm still living at Uncle Kevin's place, and moving back into my parents' house was never even on the table. Staying here with my aunt and uncle has been nothing short of a lifesaver. Most nights, we eat dinner together. On weekends, we'll throw on a movie or just hang out in the living room. It's quiet, comforting. It feels like what a family is supposed to feel like. I actually found out, through a casual conversation Aunt Donna had with one of our cousins, that Uncle Kevin did follow up after the graduation disaster. But it wasn't a phone call. It was serious. He had a lawyer friend draft up a formal letter, basically a legal threat warning my dad to take down every post immediately and issue a public apology or face defamation charges. Apparently, my dad tried to puff his chest out at first, arguing and denying, but when he realized Kevin wasn't bluffing, he backed off. The posts vanished. No apology, of course, but I didn't expect one. You'd think that would have been the end of it. That maybe, just maybe, they'd recognize they crossed a line and accept that they burned whatever bridge was left. You'd be wrong. A few days ago, I got another email. I become really cautious after the last round of drama. I triple-check sender names before opening anything. This one came from an address I didn't recognize, but the subject line made my stomach drop. "We need to talk, Mom and Dad." My first instinct was to block it on sight, delete it, pretend it never existed. But that little voice of curiosity crept in. I told myself I just wanted to see what they had the nerve to say now. So I opened it. It was shorter than the last message but packed with the same manipulative nonsense. They said they were deeply disappointed in my actions, that I was being disrespectful and ungrateful. They repeated the claim that Kevin and Donna were brainwashing me and didn't have my best interests at heart. Then they switched gears. They said they were seeing a family therapist, though I'd bet money that was a lie, and that the counselor had encouraged them to make one final attempt at reconciliation. They said they were willing to forgive me if I agreed to meet with them in person, at a neutral place, on a specific date and time. I didn't respond. I didn't even think about it. But in a moment of weakness, I didn't block them either. I told myself I was just keeping tabs. Just staying informed. That was a mistake. 2 days later, another email showed up. Same sender. The subject line this time, "Disappointed in you, Mom and Dad." I hesitated. I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. The message started off like the last one: guilt trips, accusations, the usual. But then it took a sickening turn. They said Uncle Kevin threatening legal action was proof that he had something to hide. They called Donna and Kevin unstable, said they weren't fit to care for me. And then, they brought up the miscarriage again. They wrote, and I quote, "The only reason they lost their baby was because they weren't the kind of people God wanted raising a girl. Your aunt lost that baby because she wasn't meant to be a mother. You need to wake up and come home before it's too late." I froze. My heart dropped into my stomach. This time, I didn't hesitate. I slammed my laptop shut, blocked the sender, and deleted the thread. Then I cried. Not quiet tears. Not the kind you wipe away quickly and move on. No, these were the ugly, gasping, shoulder-shaking kind of sobs. I hadn't cried like that in weeks. And I haven't told Uncle Kevin or Aunt Donna about that last email. I can't. I know it would devastate them. They've been nothing but kind to me. Supportive. Gentle. They don't deserve to carry the weight of my parents' venom. So I'm holding it in. For now. But I'll be honest, it's eating away at me. Update 4. It's been a couple months since graduation and that last ugly email. Life's calmed down a little. The biggest news? I got a job. It's entry level, nothing glamorous, but it's in my field and it's a solid start. The work is interesting enough, and my co-workers have been surprisingly kind. My direct supervisor is a woman in her late 20s, and she's been nothing but encouraging since day one. It feels good to have something of my own. And I moved out of Uncle Kevin's place. That was a huge step. I'd been feeling a bit like I was overstaying my welcome even though they constantly reassured me I wasn't. Still, I needed to stand on my own. I found a cozy little one-bedroom apartment about 15 minutes from their house. The first few nights were weird. I missed the familiar sounds of Kevin's home, the warmth, the noise, but I've been settling in. I bought a few things from a thrift shop, hung up some posters, and started making it mine. I even adopted a cat. A scruffy little tabby who's equal parts chaos and cuddles. He's already made himself at home, and he's done wonders for my mental health. I still see Donna and Kevin all the time. I go over for dinner at least once a week, sometimes more. We laugh, we eat, we exist as a family. As for my parents, radio silence. I haven't heard a single word since that last email. I've blocked them on everything: email, social media, phone. I've even thought about changing my number just to be safe. Jeremy keeps me updated now and then, something Aunt Donna isn't too thrilled about. But through him, I know my parents are carrying on like nothing ever happened. They're still going to their dinner parties, still uploading picture-perfect snapshots to Instagram, still clinging to their image of being the ideal family. I guess some people never change. One more thing, I started seeing a therapist. That was Uncle Kevin's idea. He noticed that even with the new job, the apartment, the cat, something still seemed off. I was holding on to things. He gently nudged me toward therapy, said it might help me finally unpack all of this. He was right. It's early, but it's helping. I'm learning to let go, to stop carrying guilt that was never mine to begin with. I'm rebuilding now. My own life. On my own terms. Thanks, Reddit, for listening.